Well, greetings everyone. This is Jyoti Dodia and welcome to this 80th session of the Power Virtual User Group webinar series. I'm really pleased to have Nigel Griffiths back with us today, and today's topic is upgrading to VIOS 3.1. So over to you, Nigel, who has a lot of material to cover.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. Yeah, we have about 100 slides, but not all of them have got information on. Some of them are headings to tell you what sort of section we're in, what we're going to cover next, and some of them I'll go through very quickly as they're reference slides rather than ploughing through every detail. So we have this exciting thing, the VoServer 3.1 coming out, and I'm very pleased to be invited to speak on the 80th session. Feels like a bit of a milestone over the years. Jyoti's been doing this a long time, and a lot of benefit has been got by IBM as business partners, and of course all our clients or customers or punters, depending on what you want to call yourself. So let's get started. First of all, I'd like to thank Malish and Gareth and Bob, who have contributed to the content and feedback and corrections. And I'll try and move to the next slide, and it worked. Good. So we announced the new VoServer 3.1. We knew internally that it's coming for a long time, on October the 9th, and it became generally available on November the 9th. So this is historic now. Since then, we've actually had a withdrawn from marketing for Power VM 2, which boils down to the virtual IO server 2-point-something releases. Withdrawn from marketing means you'll no longer be able to purchase it from that date. So that's still 2 years out. But the support, we've got a chart with the support times on later, is to 2021. And I don't want to encourage you to postpone it 3 years, because I always think we should be keeping up to date with our virtual IO servers. Partly because there's new function, partly because there's new performance, and partly because we actually have some bugs now and again, and we can get those fixed. And you don't really want to hit a bug that IBM fixed 5 years ago, and all your production machines are down for a week, when you could have avoided the whole thing. And I'll be saying something fairly aggressive to encourage you to keep up to date with Virtual IO Server in about 7 charts time. Okay. Now, fortunately, unlike the technical universities that happened in November, I was in Rome and Florida, where I gave a session and I had to cover all the details of what's new in the Virtual IO Server 3.1. But fortunately, 4 weeks ago, Bob Kovacs, who is Mr. VIO Server, he's the architect and designer of the Virtual IO Server. He has a team of developers working for him and testers. But he covered all the new features and functions in that session as a link there, the Power Systems Virtual User Group, and you can find all the details. That was a 90-minute session. Actually, he was very forthcoming on future enhancements, what's the sort of thing they're looking at in the future for lower latency, very, very high-speed adapters, better performance and things like that. So that's worth having a look at. So I don't need to cover any of that. I've just got one chart, which is a little reminder of what he covers in other sessions. So I stole this chart from him and colorized it a little bit. So we're moving up to VoServer 3.1, which, as you can see over here, is actually based on AIX 7.2 TL3, which is the very latest that came out about a month ago version of AIX. The current or previous VoServer, the version 2-point-somethings, are based on AIX 6.1, which has been around for quite a long time. So we're actually upgrading the base operating system on which the Virtual IO Server packages are added to turn it into a Virtual IO Server. So that's good for general housekeeping, isn't it? So we're going to remove lots of old packages. So the Systems Director agent has gone. Hooray! And a whole bunch of solutions just filling up the disks and slowing down the install process and things. There's some other things, multipathing in here for the shared storage pool. I'm a big fan of the shared storage pool. The CAA is the cluster aware AIX. The two users of that are the shared storage pool and the Power HA. And so the Power HA guys had automatic replacement of a repository disk. The shared storage pool will pick that technology up as well. Over in here, you may or may not realize If you're running AX 6.1 in the virtual VoServer 2 something, then you are limited to running in Power 7 mode. Now with moving up to AX 7.2, if you're on a Power 8 or a Power 9 machine, then you can make use of the higher levels of the processor. One thing that slipped that we were hoping to get is this Zive, which is the new interrupt handling. That was being postponed for AX 7.2, so it's not in the VoServer 3.1. If you can go on mute, that's good. I can hear somebody whispering. It's quite distracting. A little thing internally, the VoServer collects quite a lot of data, and it used to go into a thing called a solid database. They're moving up to progress, as that gives us more...
Sorry, Nigel?
Yep.
Let me mute everyone, and then you mute yourself and carry on.
Okay. I think you can still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we moved up to progress, which is a more robust, scalable database. Two little things have been removed in here. The big one, if you like, there's actually not a lot of massive new features, but is the Iscuzzy. So you'll be able to import an Iscuzzy device. It's like a LUN, isn't it, over the network, and then you export that with standard vSCSI to your client LPARs. Of course, if a client is using vSCSI, it can't tell whether it's a LUN in the VoServer or a logical volume in the VoServer, or a LAN on the fiber channel, or now Iscuzzy behind the covers. That's all kept secret for them. So that's a bit of a bigger feature, but when we move from VoServer 2 to 3, there isn't a fantastic whiz-bang, change everything. It will just operate exactly the same. It'll be the same commands, the same technology. They'll be working slightly faster, but no big whiz-bang technology, relearn it from scratch type upgrade that's going to be disruptive. So we don't expect any problems as you upgrade. Now, for the record, the actual VoServer 3.1, once you get there, is absolutely rock solid. I have no concerns about recommending it. I don't know for a fact, but if they recompile the VoServer packages that's normally on AX6 and for AX 7.2, I imagine that probably took somebody the weekend to do. It's just a recompile. AX 7.2 is backward compatible for AX 6, for example. That everything should just compile and go. Okay, there'll be slightly newer device drivers in AX 7, so they've done a lot of testing to make sure there's no holes in that area. And we found over the years that the VoServer team are pretty good development team. I like to rate the developers as in the AX kernel. This is ignoring IBM I for JT's benefit. The kernel developers for AX are the top gun guys. If you make a mistake inside the operating system, then the server may run for a few milliseconds and then crash. So they're very, very thorough in what they do and how they test things. The virtual VoServer are the next tier team, because I learned before I even joined IBM, if you drop the customer's data, the database, or corrupt their operating system disk, that really, really upsets them. So they're very cautious, and they do lots and lots of testing. If the VoServers, both of them, go down, then you lose all your databases. It could be 200 LPARs are gone. So they're very critical. So they're very well tested, and I don't expect to have any problems with VoServer 3.1 as soon as you get there. Okay, and I've already covered, it's not a big change. We've got some Iscuzzy in here, faster device drivers, removing some old fluff, but not a massive functional change. Now, for the record, there's no public performance test results. I'm for sure it's going to be going slightly faster because you're going up to a more modern version of AIX. AIX 7.2 is sort of ongoing development. AIX 6 hasn't been developed for 4 years or something like that, so it hasn't been getting the performance tweaks that the current AIX has been enjoying. I haven't been told by the developers that they have been doing performance tests, but they've never publicly produced performance numbers for the VoServer, so they're not going to change that for this release. So let's now talk about upgrading your VIOS server to 3.1. That's what we're going to cover for the rest of this session. And my first strategy is just don't do it. Yeah? Don't upgrade your VIOS server 2 to a VIOS server 3. And that maybe sounds as a rather strange thing. Well, there's various techniques to do that, isn't it? If you're getting a brand new machine, it may be a Power 8 machine or a Power 9 machine, then it's a empty machine as it arrives. You'll be installing your VIOS server and just install 3.1 and set it up as normal. You must be doing this regularly as you've had new machines arrive. You have a set procedure of how you like them set up and some packages you might like on them and that sort of thing. So if you just start off on a new machine with 3.1, then that's it. You don't have to do an upgrade. Of course, you may have some old machines with older versions of the VIOS server that you want to upgrade. We'll come to that in a moment. Another technique is zero risk upgrade plan is you evacuate your machine. That's what live partition mobility is all about. A lot of customers can move all of their LPARs with live partition mobility. So you move all the LPARs out of your server, then you've got a server just running two old versions of the virtual I/O server. You just do a complete refresh, overwrite. I tend to call it a splat upgrade. Just scratch the disks and install a fresh copy of VIOS server 3.1, just like in the number one case. Set it up as normal, and then once it's up and running, you can do live partition mobility back to bring your client LPARs and your applications back to this machine. That assumes you've got some sort of spare capacity to do this at a peak workload. Okay. We can also do this with the shared storage pool, of course. A little bit more complicated in here. So again, you'd have to move all the LPARs that are using the shared storage pool off your server. Then you can shut down your shared storage pool and do the upgrade. Do a fresh install. So you take your VIOS servers, have no clients running for them now, so you take them out of the shared storage pool. Then you do your splat upgrade, add them back into the shared storage pool, and then we can use LPM. And I noted I actually did this test just before one of the technical universities or the night before. And yes, you can do that. If you have VIOS servers that are running like VIOS server 226, and you take some VIOS servers out of the pool, you upgrade them to 3.1, you can add them to a pool that has one back level of virtual I/O server in the pool. It's quite happy to cooperate in that case. I think that's more generous than they had done in the past. In the past, if you had a VIOS server at a higher level, it would complain that this is an old group of VIOS servers, upgrade them before I can join in. But it's quite happy to allow you to do the transition. In my testing, I've very often had 226 VIOS servers and 3.1 VIOS servers. And in my testing, I upgrade them to 3.1, and then I got an alternative disk installed so I can reboot off the old disk and take it back to 6.2 and upgrade it and take it back to 226 rather, and bring it up to 3.1 and go back, ping-ponging back and forth, and it doesn't seem to mind. It really is happy. Even though in the first 2 months ago, there was about a 50% chance that it would actually do the upgrade cleanly. But it's very happy to go back to the alternative disk and reconnect. Useful to know. Hopefully gives you some sort of confidence. Joe, you'll be muting everybody again? There we go. Thank you. Right. Just as if you do take your 3.1 and install it, then just a reminder that in the first couple of months of a new release, that there tends to be some service packs come out to cover little bugs that we find along the way. So do watch out for those if you just go to 3.1.0.0. Already there's a 3.1.0.10. That's a service pack. That's a very minor upgrade. It's nice and quick. Okay, that's just regular best practice for your VIOS server. So if you've got a VIOS server 2 and you really can't face an evacuation and refresh, okay, we're going to have to do the hard way, do the actual upgrade of the VIOS server. Now, this is a hands-on, warts and all sort of presentation. So I'm actually going to mention that what I've been using the beta version of the VoServer 3.1 for a long time now. I've actually been using the GA version that's come out recently. I've got a Power 8 HMC. I don't think the HMC has any effect whatsoever on the virtual I/O server. You have to be at the fairly recent version of the HMC, otherwise you miss out on some really good features. I actually started off with 226.21 and upgraded it from there to 226.30 something with a shared storage pool, and I took the virtual I/O server out of the shared storage pool and just did a straight without shared storage pool upgrades as well. That all works fine. And in December, if I find out any more information or more hints and tips, I'll be putting, well, I'll create a blog there anyway. You may even say there is no hints and tips, but if there's anything that comes out after this presentation, then I'll be commenting on those in my AXpert blog. Okay. So prerequisites for 3.1, hardware supported is Power 9, Power 8, Power 7 Plus. That is because they are the versions of the hardware releases that AIX 7.2 supports. There's a question about what's the minimum resources required for a VoServer, and in the past 4 years they said unchanged from previously, and then I actually can't find out what the previous statement was, trying to trace it back. From my opinion, 1 CPU, 8 gig of RAM if you're using shared storage pool or you've got lots of adapters, that should be 16 gig. 30 gigabytes of disk will let you install it. I recommend you have quite a lot more gigabytes of disk. 100 is good, especially if you're using the virtual optical DVD library. Now, that's my recommendation rather than the official one. Of course, if you're on a very small machine, you only got 4 CPUs in the new S914, for example, then having 2 VoServers with 1 CPU each, like it's taking up half of the machine. So maybe you can down-tune that a bit for very small. If you're on very big, the E980, you've got 200 CPUs, then your VoServers probably need to be 4 or 5 times bigger than the numbers here. The whole point of having dual VoServers, which are highly recommended, and just about everybody has done that, the whole idea of that is that you're allowed to do live updates and upgrades, do it at a quieter time, do one half at a time, make sure that the dual paths are working. On AIX, you run the ls path command and it tells you what's going on. And it's automatic after a little while. I'm not quite sure how fast it notices a path coming back up and putting it online. I always say it's best go to lunch at that point. The IMHOs, in my humble opinion. That's a little question that came up. I thought everybody knew that, but there we are. Maybe it means something else somewhere else. Okay, so that's just a little reminder. This is good housekeeping. So we support the Power 7 Plus and above. These are also known as the D models because the actual machine type model name ends with a D. And so here's a list of them. The ones at the bottom in grey are not supported for a fact. So I asked the developers, well, I've got a couple of Power 7s. They're perfectly okay machines. They're not like our core functions, but they just sit there in the background. What happens if you have a Power 7 machine, like a Model A, B, or C? And the answer is, that should work fine, but it's not supported. It is at your own risk. And even if you paid for support, you won't be getting VoServer support on that hardware. And then I said, well, do you actually check about the hardware model when you start up? And the answer was no, we're not going to check it. So you will get away with it, but it is at your own risk. So if you have some little old machines, perhaps you just use these for tests or something, or it's your systems administrator playpen for trying things out, then that will work fine. But don't take your production machines on Power 7 into VoServer 3.1 country. Okay, so what happens if you have older machines, Power 5 and 6? In my computer room, we've just had all our Power 6 machines crushed and disposed of, but I do have some Power 7s. Well, you go up to the 32, that's the very latest version, and then you stop there. That will be supported for another 2 or 3 years. We've got a chart coming up, and you can have a look. If you're on Power 7, not the Plus models, then your computers are all at least 5 years old. So in 2 years' time, they'll be 7 years old, and which time they probably should be recycled, shall we say, or repurposed. They're taking so much electricity, and the hardware maintenance is so large, you can buy an entire new Power 9 machine and make a profit in 6 months by not paying the hardware maintenance on these older machines. So next is a little history lesson. Where are we on here? Got my pointer up. We're looking at 3.1 at the top. So that's gone GA already, and it's going to run for a couple of years in here. 1, 2, 3 years as normal. This bars are all the same length. This one's slightly longer. The 6.2 is going out here to 2021. That's good. After that, if you pay more money, you can get some further support if you really want. Excuse me. I'm going to take a little drink of water. Let me have a look at that eye chart.
And just a reminder that you can enter questions or comments into the chat window. Thank you to Gareth Coates for answering some of those, and we will take them towards the end of the session. So please keep typing in your questions.
Okay, thanks, Jyoti. So we can see in here that we're this area here. So 225 is still supported. 224, anything other than that, not really supported. So let's make a few comments on that, if I can get my down to work. Yeah. So this one, the 225, we got another year in here, and 224 is about to end. So let me make some fairly blunt comments on maintenance strategies. And I hit the wrong button. Let's go forward. Here. Okay, so if you're on 226.31, you're a genius. It's only just out and you've upgraded. I'm very impressed. If you're on 226.20 something, then you're pretty talented. You're on the ball. Good. Keep up the good work. 225, well, you've got 1 year's left of support. Of course, we've got bugs in there that and more features in 226 that you're missing out on, so that's perfectly okay. You wait for the next slide.
224.
All right, if you're on 224, then support ends soon. So cancel Christmas or your winter break now. You'll be working straight through December to keep your virtual I/O servers under support. If you phone up with a problem with 224 after the end of the year, then if you're in a dire situation, IBM support may say that was fixed in a later release. You will have to upgrade your VIOS server to the later release, and then we'll start investigating the problem. So while you're having a crisis, you're starting to do upgrades of your virtual I/O server. That is not a pretty place to be. All right, now the next slide may get me into trouble in here, but there we go. So if you're on 223, you're a terrible person. It's been out of support for a year. Clean up your act quickly. You may get sacked. If you're on 222, I think you're an idiot. 3 years out of date, out of support. There was a very famous, and Gareth quotes this to me quite regularly, from the Sequent days, where a chap, a very famous person called Curtis Rader, once in the support room, stood up and shouted at a customer, "Please step away from the keyboard, you're not qualified to use this device." The person at the other end was so bad technically that they were going to damage the computer if they carried on typing. So it's gone down into folklore. Gareth did look him up, he's still around. So well done, Curtis. We're still enjoying your turn of phrase. If you're older than that, then I'm sorry, you're just a moron. I can't think of any reason why you'd want to do that or could even justify that. You're a dangerous liability to your company. And I suggest please take the bus home, as we suspect your car isn't safe either. You probably haven't had the brakes checked for 4 years. And you're just asking for a major accident, and it will be your fault. Okay. Remember, this was just for fun, and I'm just trying to put the pressure on that if you're out of support, then you deserve what you get if you have problems. I'm sorry about that, but that's just the way things are. Just like if you're the person that looks after the family car, you don't fail to get your car maintained because it's got your family in it and you take it very seriously, and that's the way you should be looking after your computers as well. Well, that's enough philosophy for today. Let's have a look at some background reminders and things, documentation and software. A whole load of bits and pieces I want to cover before we actually start looking at the upgrades. Okay, so update and upgrade sound exactly the same. If you look at the dictionary definition for that, it's probably the same. In computers, particularly the VoServer, an update is a minor improvement, adding one of those last digits at the end, and an upgrade is a major improvement. So the VoServer 2 is based on AX6, and 3 is based on AX7. If you're going from AX6 to 7, that is an upgrade. That's a major improvement. That's a splat overwrite of your disk and restart with a fresh copy of AIX. And the same is true with the VoServer. There are quite often some other software that goes onto the VoServer. And you'll all know, if you have hands-on experience, you have to type in the OEM setup env command again and again to get to root to fiddle about with things. And that was only there really to install specific device drivers or specific fiber channel vendors. But there is this website in here, and this lists the 26 approved tools, which is usually used for performance monitoring, backup, security, and some device drivers. You will need to reinstall these.
Sorry, Nigel, there's some echo.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
I'm on mute, so I'm not quite sure.
It's got better again. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Keep mute everybody if you can. Right, so those 26 tools are approved by the virtual VoServer team. If they find them on the machine, they'll have no problem with that. If you've got anything else on your VoServer, they may, if you're into a critical situation, then they may ask you to uninstall that because that other software may be causing the problem. But you've been warned, you're not allowed really to run any other software. Way back, I used to use NFS on my VoServers, thinking, well, it looks like a general purpose admin server, so we did all sorts of things in it. But no, we have to stop doing that anymore. Now, when we do this upgrade, because we're doing a splat install, it means we're going to completely scratch the disk out, and that takes us back to an absolutely clean VoServer with none of these extras. And at the technical universities, I ask, who suspects that there's all sorts of crufty building up in your VoServers? And if you don't know what crufty is, you reach into your pocket and scrape along the bottom, and you get these sort of fluffy, crumbly bits and pieces. Nobody knows what it is, where it came from, but it slowly builds up. And the same with VoServers. People have written script, they put log files in funny places, they've installed something and deleted it, and then there's bits and pieces lying about. They're never quite sure how clean their VoServer is after it's been operating for a while. Okay, so if you want to do a traditional upgrade, then I'm looking at the high-level process now. So we're going to do a backup of the VoServer metadata. That's the configuration of the virtual networks and the virtual disks. We have to save that off the machine somewhere else. Then we're going to install VoServer, in this case 3.1, via the makesysb, probably. And that remakes the root VG from scratch. The file systems are all brand new, and then plays in all the packages into the new operating system. Then we need to get the backup of the VoServer back onto the VoServer. And we have to put it on the network typically to do that. Then we restore that metadata, and then our VoServer is up and running exactly as it was with a new, fresh virtual VoServer operating system. If you've got a shared storage pool, there's a couple of other steps that are actually required to take it out of the cluster while you did this operation and bring it back later on. The backup of non-VoServer applications happens there at 2, so you have to save your code and your data for any of those applications that you want to put back that are in the root VG. If you have other disks that aren't in root VG, well, they'll be untouched. You can remount those and pull in any code and data on those. And then at step number 5, then we'd have to reload the code and data for your special applications. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff that I found out the hard way. Oh, I didn't realize that. I forgot about that. Things like your virtual DVD library or your optical library, that won't be carried over if you have lots of versions of operating systems, IBM AX, Linux, whatever it is. They'll all disappear unless you do something about that if they're in root VG. You can run an LPAR on a logical volume that is just part of root VG. It wasn't good practice, but if you're limited on the number of disks, then some people have done that. And as a quick dodge in an emergency, I've done that a couple of times. You could also use these file back, so it's like the logical volume in root VG, but it's actually you just create like a 16 gigabyte file, and you mount that as the virtual disk for your client. All those in red will disappear as you move over. Now, if you do an alternative disk install, well, they'll still be there on a different disk. You've rebuilt root VG, but you still have the original there. So you could go back and pick them up later on. But if you don't do an alternative disk install, you may have just destroyed all of those information. Just as a little reminder, the VIOS BR command backup file, give it a name. You have to go and does it. It's good practice to actually set it up on a frequency, so like daily 10 files, and then it will do a quick backup. It's not very big, and it doesn't have any performance impact, and it will keep up to 10 copies of your backups, which is a good policy. You should be moving those off the VoServer at some point as well. They all go into a config backups directory for your padmin user. You can see a couple of examples in here. They're actually XML files with a whole bunch of config and rules in them. So they're not very big. And then to do a restore, the view list just does this operation here. Or you can do the restore and give it a file, and that will restore all your metadata. So it's always been a way of, you could upgrade your VoServers doing it this sort of traditional method with a backup restore and overwrite install in the middle. Now, a lot of people use NIM to install the VoServer. I'm not a NIM expert by any means, but I can do an AIX or a VoServer simple install, a BOSINT install for the AIX or a MakesSB install for the VIOServers. Now, to do that, the NIM server has to be at the very latest version of AIX, which it may not be obvious, but I have said this about 5 times now. The VoServer 3.1 is based on 7.2 TL3 Service Pack 2, so you'll have to upgrade your NIM server to this release to actually roll out copies of the Virtual IO Server 3.1. When you actually get up to this level, you'll find there's new commands available to you. There's actually, yes, it's complicated here. There's 2 commands. Both of them are called VIOS upgrade. One of them is in the VoServer if you upgrade to this level. And the other one is on the NIM server if you upgrade past storage Service Pack 1. They'll suddenly appear at that release. So that's worth knowing and worth getting up to these levels of the operating systems to make sure you got that available. I actually told that they are the same command, but they work very, very differently, and the options are very, very different depending on which environment. If it's sitting on the VoServer, it will do one thing, and the NIM server will do 2 other things. We'll look at that in a minute. The syntax is different, which is good because you don't accidentally use the wrong syntax. Okay. Yes, and don't forget that's not the same as the update iOS command. That's the one we use for minor updates. 2265 to 2266. Right. Now, yes, the Knowledge Center for the upgrades. Although there's quite a lot of information in there, in the Griffiths family, we have something called Not My Particular Favorite, which means it's rubbish. Any references, two big bugs in here. One is that any references to 22630 really means now has been superseded by events, and the documentation hasn't been improved yet, so it's 22632. And if it references 22XX, it really means 224X. Although 222 and 223 should work, it's never been tested, so you really need to be at 224 to start doing the upgrade in some circumstances. Now, these problems with the documentation have been recognized. They're actively being improved, and it may take them till mid-December. The cogs wind very slowly, updating the documentation. I think it's probably because of the number of languages it needs translation into and those sorts of things, and the internal mechanisms inside IBM. So some of it is a bit vague. It's not consistent. You can find two different numbers depending on which manual page you're looking at that you got to get to. Whole bunch of assumptions about what's going on. It's written in developer ease. Developers think about if statements, right? Nested if statements. They then write this out in English, and it becomes completely vague about what they're actually talking about. Is that else clause to do with that if statement or that if statement type problems in English? It really gets me confused. And if you do get confused reading the manuals, it may not be you. Hopefully I'm steering you right by this presentation. So let's move on. I'm not going to go through here. Here's the links to all the details about the upgrading to 3.1. You can see in here sort of vague intro things. The first top level page says you must do things which you don't have to do. Without shared storage pool and with shared storage, and there's a few other bits and pieces. Worth reading them all, rather than just cherry picking. Unsupported and miscellaneous are fairly important as well. Okay, then there's some other places in here. What's new with the virtual I/O server is here. In the announcement, it said we now support the USB memory flash keys or drives or thumb drives or whatever you want to call them. That actually started in April, but that's certainly true for the 3.1 version. When you download the DVDs, there's now a special one called Flash, which is the one you should push onto a USB memory key. Then these are the two variations of the same command are in two different places, and the NIM one took me about 3 hours to actually go and find. It's in the AIX documentation for that particular release. So that's a quick link to get you there. If you're interested in the Iscuzzy things, then just a link in here about an intro. It's got various sections in here, and these are the manual pages you have to go and look at. So you've got a starter pack now. You can actually go and look at something to work out how to do that. In my benchmark center, we had this old joke about don't talk about Iscuzzy and high performance in the same sentence. Oops, I just did that. 20 years ago, when I was doing lots and lots of benchmarking, we tried Iscuzzy, and it was so slow that we said, well, we can't win benchmarks against the competition using Iscuzzy. But then you have to remember, in those days, it was 10 megabit networks. No, we had 10 gigabit networks. We even got 100 megabit networks already, and the performance guys are talking about 200 in the next 2 years. So that is 10,000 times faster. So what was holding back Iscuzzy 20 years ago no longer holds it back. And if you actually look at fiber channel, most people are using 16 gigabit, and a couple of people with brand new machines are using 32 gigabit. So the fiber channel guys are falling a little bit behind the networking guys now. So that old stigma of Iscuzzy slow is no longer there. And I know certain workloads like cloud, they like to avoid fiber channel disks because it seems expensive if you're trying to run cheap as chips virtual machines, and they do quite a lot of Iscuzzy. And I actually found I've got some old V7000s. They support Iscuzzy. I never even looked before because I've never wanted to use it, but it's out there, so maybe I'll have a go and write that up for you as well sometime. Okay, so where do we get the software from? Well, we got used to in the past 5 years going to Fix Central, but that's where you get updates. If you want the actual install image, like you do with 3.1, for the upgrade, then we have to go to the entitled System Support page with IBM, and you have to prove you're entitled to it. You have a valid license and support contract to actually download that software. Just a little reminder, you may have worked that out already. Chris Gibson in Australia, works for Lab Services, sent me this. Well, it's in a tweet, actually. He got onto ESS, and I've got a problem with my password at the moment. So these are the two packages in here. You can see 3100, DVD 1 and 2, for 5 and a bit gigabytes in here. But you can also see here, this is the package which has got the flash in it. If you want to install from the USB memory key, and we have done that in our computer room for our new Power 9 machines, really, really fast way of getting your VoServers. We get the machine in the rack, we pop in the USB memory key with the latest VoServer in it, and we can go home and do an install of a VoServer in about 5 to 6 minutes flat. It's really quick. You'll notice a couple of things in here. One, this is smaller than these two combined, I think, isn't it? Yes, just a bit. This actually has 31010, so this actually has the first service pack already installed. If you installed it from the DVD images, then you'd have to go and add the first service pack, and I strongly recommend you do that for any software that's just out to get those first service packs in quick. Okay. There's also an expansion packing down in here. I'm told that this is where your LDAP and Kerberos extras are placed in there. I haven't used those myself. Okay, now if you're using NIM, then to install your VoServer, you'll need to get the makesysb. I mean, it's a real pain in the neck because it's actually spread into 2 or even more parts in the DVDs. There are 2 DVDs. And then you have to cap them together, and even when you do that, you'll end up with a 3.1, not a 3.1.0.10 version. If you go and get the flash image, then when you get the makesysb of that, you get the full service pack already installed on it. Now, when I did that, typically you'd use a loop mount on AIX to open the ISO package that's the DVD. And I found I couldn't actually read the makesysb out of it. I got a can't open readable file error, which completely threw me. This may be a temporary thing, or maybe I was doing something wrong. I don't know. So I've got Ubuntu 14 on power. I moved it over there and did a loop mount. That worked fine. I could pull out the makesysb. And because it's one ISO for the flash, because you can't put 2 ISOs onto a USB memory key, you only need one. There's only one single makesysb file, so it's simpler to get at, and it gives you the service pack for free. This is my, for reference only, way of actually extracting the makesysbs off DVDs. If there's 2 of them, you probably get your own method, but that's a quick way of doing it. So we've done our homework, we've got our hardware and our software ready. So let's think about doing some upgrades. Now, this is where things get complicated. There's 4.5 pathways to upgrading to 3.1. And there's 4 pathways, but they're slightly different whether you have an shared storage pool or you don't have a shared storage pool. So you could say this is 9 pathways, but we'll try and keep it simple. So I probably did this in the wrong order in here. Let's start down here. This is the traditional backup, overwrite, restore. Right? You could always do this for 10, 20 years. No, the VoServer is not quite that old, but so this is what we've already covered, right? You back up your VoServer config, you do a fresh install. You could use NIM, you can do it from your HMC, you can install it from a DVD drive in the machine. If you're a Power 9 machine, then you have to use a USB-based DVD drive or the new fancy and fast USB to do the install. Then you do the recover of your backup. And of course, you have a little bit of a catch-22 in here that you have to get the network running to get the backup on, but then you may have set up the network not the way it was set up on the VoServer originally. So I was thinking that you could actually remove the TCP/IP. There's actually an RM TCP/IP command. Once you got the data there, get onto the VoServer from your HMC and the console, and then when you do the recover, there's no network already running that you're using that it was going to try to reconfigure. Okay, but this has been available for a long time. You could do minor updates using this method if that's the way you prefer to do it. Okay, so another way of doing it is we're going to go down here to this is the VIOS upgrade command that runs on the VoServer itself. So you're running the VoServer. You may have had to do an upgrade to a minimum level. Then it will automatically, it's in green in here, so automatically does this for you. It will take the backup, rebuilds the VoServer on a new alternative disk, migrates the config over there and sets everything up, sets up the boot lists and reboots onto that new disk, and it should already be configured. It may have to do a further reboot to make sure that everything's working. As it after the first reboot, it does the configuration stuff. So this is quite a nice way of doing things. You're running the VoServer, and you can watch it run, and it says it's okay, and it says, "Can I please reboot?" And you say yes, and then you come up. Much like you would on a new VoServer, it asks you to accept the licenses type of things, and set the password, and then it will do the config stuff, reboot, and you're up and away. Right, now, if you're a NIM person, then there's two ways of doing the NIM upgrade. So up in here, we have on the NIM server, VoServer upgrade boss inst. This is very much like we've done in the past with a straight boss inst install of a VoServer, maybe to a new machine. But there's a new one in here called the alt disk version. And the name is not very good, because you can do an alternative disk using the boss inst, and you can do an alternative disk using the alternative disk method. In the top one, it does a backup, halts the VoServer, does a straightforward NIM install of the new VoServer onto the same disk. If you asked for an alternative disk, it actually does the rebuild using the makesysb onto that alternative disk, but that disk becomes your backup old disk, and it upgrades the current one, recovers the data, and it comes up on that original disk. In here, there's some guesswork. This is what I think is going on right now. If you're using the alternative disk in here, then it works a little bit more like this one down in here. So with the VoServer running, it builds up the new disk after taking the backup, and then recovers it, and then sets the boot list and boots you off the new disk. Okay, 4 different methods. There's one at the very end that I'll actually cover for the shared storage pool. It's slightly different and not going to be popular. Right, so there's 4 methods in here. So yeah, again, not to be confused with the update iOS command. That was doing for the smaller updates that we use every year as we upgrade our virtual IO server. Right, this is just highlighting the fact this is the update iOS command /dev. This is, for me, it's always a NIM directory. It's installing accept, and then you see all those copyrights covers messages for the millionth time come up the screen, and 20 minutes later you reboot it, and you got your new updated command. And I've just realized that is wrong up here. That should say update. Right, so in the upgrade command, the command looks like this. Big, long command with all sorts of parameters in here. And we're going to cover these in detail, but just highlighting that the commands should be very different. Okay, so non-shared storage pool. This is most people. When I ask for hands up at technical universities, about 1/3 of people are using shared storage pools, but it's growing in popularity. So, you've got different paths in here. If you're on any of these older versions, and of course these ones in red you should not be on, but skipping around that, you can use the NIM boss install method. That's effectively automating the traditional method for you. Traditional method, you take the backup, do the NIM install, and then you do the restore, whereas this is all being done for you via the VOS upgrade boss inst command. Another way of doing it is you use the VoServer update command to get to the very latest version, 226.32. This 31 and 32 is what you need. Remember, this is the update command. This is a regular minor update. When you get to 31 or 32, you now have the VoServer upgrade command, and you can use that to get to 31. You can also then use the alt disk, the NIM alt disk mode to get to 31 or 3.1. So, two different ways of doing things. I'll tell you what I prefer in a minute. Okay, so let's move to the shared storage pool case. If you're on the older versions of the VoServer, you have to get out of that, so you may as well go from these older ones up to 226. Then you can use, and you'll use the update iOS command to do that. So that's one set. That's going to take you half an hour rebooting it and bringing it back up. Then you'll be able to rerun the update iOS command again to get to 226.31 or a later number if it's available. Then you've got all of these available to you. There's a little note in the red line in here that the traditional, I've got traditional plus there. It'll actually save the shared storage pool metadata as well, because this is the shared storage pool route. And then you can use any of these options in here to get to 3.1. There's one of these that is quite easy. It doesn't involve you doing the hard work. And it's this one in here, the VoServer upgrade from the VIOServer. The NIM is a bit more complicated. If you're a NIM expert and you have thousands of VoServers to upgrade, then you'll be using this one up in here. Okay, now I'm going to move on. This is my summary of what I recommend everybody does for non-SSP and with SSP. And it's the same process. You upgrade to 226.32, and then you use the VoServer upgrade command. This seems to be the low-hanging fruit, the easy way to do things, and avoid some of the complication with the NIM server we'll come to later on. So that's what I recommend you should do. Of course, you'll have to make up your own mind. And I hit the wrong button, so I'll go forward. Okay, so here's me. This is using my ncluster command. You can find it at this link in here. It gives you the summary of the shared storage pool. As you do upgrades in here, you'll see that I've upgraded all of these up to 3.1. This is from a couple of weeks ago. I'll take it to a 3.2 now, and you can see these ones in here are still on level. They're on the older version here. Oh, sorry, they're all 3.1. No, there's something wrong with this chart. This is an old chart. Okay. All right, this is telling you the up level and on level. These are the ones that should be upgraded, and they've got the wrong number over here. I'll have to go and fix the chart before we send it out. Moving on. Right. Now, you may ask me, but I don't have an extra disk to do an alt disk install. And I strongly recommend the IT team organize a charity fund run to raise funds to purchase some extra disks. Having the alternative disks, particularly my testing, actually saved my life 100 times. And it's a very quick parachute. It means that if it all goes wrong, you can get back to the old VoServer in 3 minutes at maximum, guaranteed to work, take you back to your previous level. If you've got mirrored disks, but no alternative one, you can break your mirror and use the new spare. When you break the mirror, the new spare disk is marked as unused, and that can then be used for your alternative disk. The alternative is you're going to overwrite your root VG. So that means you need to back up your root VG, take your make sysb, get that somewhere else, maybe have a NIM server set up, ready to push that back into your VoServer if it all goes wrong. And then you also need to back up your backup, ready to do an install in case your backup server fails. Then you should be taking the backup of the metadata in case you can't go backwards or forwards. You can still do a traditional install and a manual a restore of your VoServer configuration. Okay, in my case, what I tend to do is take a makesysb to a local disk and drag that to my NIM server. That gives me a parachute. You probably want 2 or 3 parachutes before you go for this. Now, I'm a noddy NIM user. I can do the basics, as I already said. I don't do things like updates or upgrades with NIM or post-install scripts. I just log in and do it all by hand. Or you can make custom resources, can't you? You can build an image and update various things and put up backup software or whatever you want to set it up, and then do a makesysb and use that as a new master customized resource. I don't do any of those sorts of things. And the VoServer can be quite complicated. If you're installing AIX, you only need one network adapter and a disk and you're away. The VoServer is nearly always complicated. It has multiple physical networks and fiber channels. Then it has virtual networks and a C, lots of disks of different types in there. It is a fairly big, complicated LPAR in that sense of the word. So it is more complicated in installing a VoServer than a standard LPAR. Right, now, so I recommend the NIM ones are really for the experts that know what they're doing. This is a reminder, upgrade to the latest version and set it up. I can do the easy install, but don't do anything more complicated than that. Then you're going to have to get your makesysb. Then you're going to have to make a special resource called a VoServer, a KEK, and a HMC on the NIM server. See later. Then you can do the. Got to make sure that your network adapters are NIM capable. On Power 7, I think, maybe on Power 8 as well, there were some network adapters that are not NIM capable. So you have to make sure you can avoid those. You've got to remove any IP addresses you have on the C. Unfortunately, we do that out of laziness, but I think we'll move away from that because it actually catches you out here with your VoServer upgrade. And if you have, then this particular combination won't work. Yep, if you put your IP addresses on virtual networks, well, you're going to have to temporarily put the IP address on your physical networks to get the install work, because when the NIM stops the VoServer and does a reinstall, it's effectively taking you down to SMS mode and getting the firmware to actually run the network card to actually do the transfer of the images. If, of course, your NIM fails, you're in hyperspace. It was doing something. There is a log file. I've got a list of the log files later on, trying to work out, well, what happened? Is it a NIM issue? Is it a network issue? Did I get the wrong parameters in the options? Maybe I just hit a bug. It's very difficult to determine those. As opposed to the VoServer upgrade command, where you're sitting there looking at the screen while it does things. Okay. But if you're going to do that and you've got lots and lots of servers, lots and lots of VoServers, hundreds of them, then you may be in that path. So I recommend lots of backups in here, back it all up. If you're a NIM expert, then there's obvious network reset up issues to cater for. The traditional is a bit mechanical, but it is safe. It's been there for years. You should be already know how to do this. This is your disaster recovery. If you have a ghastly accident with the RM command on your VoServer, this is probably the way you get out of that situation. Fresh install, take your latest VoServer backup, play that in, recover it, and you're up and running again. Or we have the new VoServer upgrade command. It's a bit of a mouthful. That's my favorite. Right, so the traditional one, we should already do that. I'm not going to cover that in any more detail. Number 2 is the VoServer upgrade. So let's have a look at that. Here's the command. This is as a lowercase l, just to confuse you on the screen. And then you have the image file, which is the makesysb. Then it says makesysb install disk. This is the alternative disk in here. I don't think the name makes a lot of sense. You add the -C if it's a cluster, which means shared storage pool. And there's a nice little feature in here, the -G. This only came out with the 22631, has a -G. You give it a file full of file names, and it will back up those automatically and put them onto the new disk. Quite nice way of bringing a whole load of stuff up. You know, things like etc. hosts and other things that you want to bring over, and just have a double check that you're still working the same way when you arrive on your new 3.1. Okay. Now, when you run this, it does a whole bunch of things. You can list what's going on with this minus L minus Q, so the query. It will tell you what sort of state it's in. A lot of it happens out on the screen. I'll show you that in a second. When it actually reboots, it's still carrying on doing some of the configuration information, you know, restoring the backup over there. So when it first boots, don't log in and start hacking away, changing things. Give it some time. Run this command when it's rebooted, and it will tell you when it's actually finished doing the full final part of the upgrade. Maybe always when you get there. Now, it will refuse a couple of times of things it doesn't like. First one is I run it in here, and it says you already have an alt-inst root VG. And here it is. I'm running on this one, and there's a previous alt-install root VG in here. It says, I'm going to use that name. You've already got one. Get rid of it, or you're going to get very confused when we reboot. So this is me just using the size. Reminds me of which disk it's on. I can make very clearly that if it's a local internal disk or a fiber channel disk. So one way of doing that is you can go to root and you run this alt root op command minus X, and that just gets rid of it. That's one way of doing it. There's other ways of doing it. If it's like this, you can just do an export of it, and that gets rid of it. In this case, I've done you've got to be careful because the ODM can remember what it was called even if it's offline. But I imported it, giving it a different name, and then the upgrade command will be happy with that. If it says the disk is in use or the disk is in pool use as an error, yeah, be very careful because it might be true. If you run the ls, this is a shared storage pools, ls cluster minus d, it lists all of the disks which are in the pool, and this is a regular cluster disk with data on it, and the rep disk is the repository disk. Very clear command to tell you exactly what's in the pool. If it's in the pool, don't overwrite it because that's catastrophic. Okay, another things you can do is if you want to find out, well, which disks are free, and it has to appear on the list that this command produces to actually be used by the upgrade command. There's a new one, unused, and that actually picks up NVMe devices if you're on a Power 9 machine. You can, if it thinks it's in use because there's something on the disk, the clean disk command. Look up the output of this to tell you what to do, whether it's a data disk or a repository disk. You can force the issue. Don't do that if it's really in use. This one actually is another way of cleaning out the ODM so that it's definitely unused. So all of those commands together will get you past this. I'm not using these disks from the command. Right, now this is the output of the rest of the command when I've removed those sorts of problems. And here it is up in here. Don't worry about his name in here. This is the beta versions, 44 beta, don't have to be the gold master. I've got a shared storage pool attached, and I gave it a list of file names in here. And so it rebuilds the disk. If you, in here there's a broadcast slide, that's in 2 slides time. It tells everybody, stop fiddling about with the VoServer, I'm backing it up and I'm going to move it and upgrade it. Whole bunch. This is now got the alternative disk installed in here. I sat here with nmon, and you can see it copying things between the 2 disks as it rebuilds up your alternative disk. It's force unmounting things in here. It cleans up the disk because it's still online with the superboot block active, but it does that so it gets a clean boot. Little things in here. Then it stops the system says, if you didn't intend to do an upgrade, hit Control-C quick. Then if you don't do it, it carries on doing it. So it does lots of things in here. The disk is ready, so it's going to reboot for the first time here. Here's the command. You may have lots of operators, p-admin guys will get this please refrain from fiddling. Then here's the virtual I/O server coming up, and the regular outputs of AIX in here, adding all the features in here, starting to start the services as TCP/IP and NFS, and it's detected that it's a VIOS server, and it switches off ASO. Down the bottom, it comes in and says p-admin, and you think, oh, I can log in and start doing stuff. No, I'd wait. Well, you can log in. You have to use password here. The first accept license is here. And then the first thing you should do is run this LQ command. So what's happening? And then it gives you details of everything that happened. The license is accepted successfully. Further down here, restoring the backups. It's replaying some of the devices in here. Then it's the recovery of the backup requires a second reboot in here. So it actually has already done the second one when I've recorded the output of this log. And then it does a bunch of other things in here. It's got this sort of before and after thing in here, but there's no problems in here. We're still successful. It takes out the thing you have, the init tab that kicked off this restore when it rebooted, and it's good to go. So then you're thinking, oh, right, now what do I do? And you suddenly think, yes, a regression test, that would be good. I should have taken the output of a bunch of commands before I moved, so I could check that my virtual networks and my virtual disks are all there. So in my expert blog, I'll put recommended files that you should copy over if you're using this method, and perhaps a whole bunch of commands like the ls map minus all command and those sorts of things, so you can double check that things are there. Right, now if you use that -g files command, then it's going to save those files. Unfortunately, the manual page doesn't tell you where, but they end up in home admin backup files. It's obvious when you see it, and then it has the same name as the name in the actual file command. Yeah, next time I'm going to copy this one over, because I've had to switch on VI editing at the shell scripts, I don't know, 20 times a day for my entire career, it seems. But then I'm fairly crash and burn. Right. Oh yes, if you have the -c option in here, then it's got shared storage pool in here. The shared storage pool takes a little while for it to get going. It has like a 5-minute daemon that kicks in and says, oh, I should be a part of a pool, and then we're not. So we'll start trying to talk to the pool to actually get things back up and working properly. In here, this is reminding us that if you've got a VIOS pool, you should have some of the pool running at all times, and I recommend having at least 2 VIOS servers, so that when it comes up and it wants to join a running pool, rather than it being the first one to come up and there's no other ones out there. If you've got a very small pool of 1 or 2 VIOS servers, then you should do one and then the other. If you've only got a VIOS server shared storage pool with 1 VIOS server, it's a cluster, but that's an oxymoron, a cluster of 1, then this VIOS server upgrade won't work, because when it comes up, there won't be a shared storage pool to join. It'll be the first one actually coming up. The alternative there is you do the traditional method in here, so you do recovery after you've brought the VIOS server up. Or you could add a VIOS server to the shared storage pool, so you've got a shared storage pool of 2, and then you can back up one and then the other. Okay, a few little warnings in there. All right, let's look at the NIM VIOS server upgrade. 2 options: boss install, which is hand cranking a traditional, is the way I think of it, and the alt disk, which is a newer way of doing it, a bit more online way of doing it. So here are the commands: boss inst, of course, and alt disk. The host name in here, yes, this isn't quite true, is it? This is the name of the NIM resource in here, right? Then there's the VIOS server XSB and a bunch of other commands in here. You can use this method if, for example, your VoServer has a multi-disk root VG. That's what these commands in here. So you can say the root VG is on these 3 disks, and the alternative needs to be on these 3 disks. And these 2 things here about. And e-resources allows you to bring in your network config and other things like that. So I'm going to leave you to work through those combinations in here. I'm just going to show you some examples. That's what I've just said. You would think, wouldn't you, if you're doing a NIM install of a VoServer, you make a machine called of your VoServer name, and then this VoServer name, you'd think it would be the command you use in here has a machine NIM machine name, and that doesn't work, and that's not documented. You have to do a whole lot of other work, and go into places that I've never been before. It tells you that it's not available, and you go in here and say yes, it is, because you have to go to somewhere else to actually connect those. So this is the NIM managed control objects. So this is where you'd manage machines in here, but there's a new thing in here. You go into here, and I'm going to define a management object, and here I have a HMC, a KEC, and a VoServer, and you need all 3 of these. And I've just got some pictures of that. First I made the HMC. I have no idea what the password file is. I mean, I can guess, but I'm not sure what the format is. And then you, when you're actually creating it, you get a whole bunch more fields than if you go back and try and edit it, which is a little bit strange. Here's my HMC details in here. Then to create the VoServer in here, I had to create this is a server, a KEC, which is called Red. This is the name of the machine, and the VoServer in here. And so I had to previously go and create the Red control object and put it into here. Let's carry on going down. Then if you go to the VoServer, if it's not already controlled by the NIM, then you can disable it, and then you can use the remote management. It's the VoServer, asking the NIM server, I want to be managed by you. That's the interface you're going to do that over, and the NIM host name over here, and then it starts up the NIMShared to do that. So that gets the VoServer ready. And then here is a really nice option that we have in here. There's a -v option, which is validate. And so you can select all your command options in here that say validate me, and it goes through this and it says successful. The first 5 times I did that, it failed for different reasons, and I had to go creating a VoServer control object was one of them. I had to get the IP address off the C. It detected that, didn't like that. There was something else it detected and didn't like. But when you got success for your VoServer, this is the 2 alt disk and the boss inst. They were both going to work okay now. It actually tells you the name of a log file in here, so you can see all the tests that it actually ran, if it was successful, of what is actually going on behind the covers. So here's me going to run the command. I'm doing the boss inst method. And it says, okay, it looks okay. This is going to be a log file. You can look at that later. It's checking the state of it. It looks like it's going to work. And then it stops. Well, it's doing something in the background like NIM does. And then you have to use the -q option for that particular resource. And it tells you what's going on. So in here it's boss installation has been enabled, mstate not running. But then it's going to go through a bunch of things in here. Oh, I've got these pink backgrounds in here. So this is I was on the console. I could see it downloading the packages. That's always a good sign. Things are going to go forward. Later on, AX comes up, sitting underneath the VoServer. And then the end state has changed in here. Boss install initialization. You can see it going through, adding all the packages, booting that up. Then there's a rebooting. And later on, then it goes to success, and it goes back to ready for NIM operation when it's done. And that took roughly 20 minutes or something in my case, my networks and my disks and things. Yeah, let's carry on. We're going to run out of time if we're not careful. Right, there's a bunch of little gotchas and warnings. This is the warts and all bit, things that I've found that may be useful for you. In the NIM server, if you do man VoServer upgrade, it has a whole bunch of loads and loads of pages of stuff about all the options and the command options and things. There's a requirements block that you should go and find. It's extremely wordy, and I have to read it 3 times, and I sort of paraphrased it here. Otherwise, it'd take 3 slides. So. On the NIM master, you must have the VoServer defined with the MAC address. If the MAC address or the device name is not defined, you may get a message saying the boot operation might be delayed or might fail. So that's worth knowing. Normally you don't worry about that. The alt disk method cannot be used for this C with an IP address on it, so you have to change that. Yeah. Here's dirty laundry here. Of course, we tended to do that for historic reasons, as we were using the VoServers very, very early on. That was perfectly okay. You have to create another virtual adapter and put the IP address on that and not on the C. I foolishly put the IP address on the physical adapter that the C was using. All hell broke out. Don't do that. Right. In here. Yeah, you've got to be careful with the IP address to provide a real adapter capable of network booting as the 4th field in the VoServer definition. That was on one of the earlier charts. Yeah, when you're booting, we've got to have a resolvable host name for the metadata restore to actually work. So that's worth knowing as well. So if you're a NIM person, then you add a resolve.conf resource to your NIM install, and that will happen automatically. Or you could use -e and give it a script that creates a resolve.conf file and /etc hosts. Okay. This is just for references. This is where the various log files goes. You're not expected to have to read those, but it's a good place to think, well, did it work or not? You want to go and check. The places to go and look. Right, yes, I've already mentioned this. If you've got a logical volume that's a client virtual disk in the root VG, they're not going to survive. If you're doing alt disk install, then it'll be on the old disk. You'll have to go and mount that and get them manually. And the clients using those until you fix that up and connected the virtual disk to the right client, they're not even going to boot. So some warnings in there. There's a 5th method, or I call it the 9th one, for the shared storage pool, but it's completely disruptive. So you upgrade to VoServer, the latest level, then you do a backup, then you stop all the LPARs. So usually a shared storage pool, unless it's used for test and dev, and you can actually take the entire pool and all the clients down. And then you could use this one, stop all the clients, stop all the VoServers in the entire pool, and then for each one do the complete overwrite install, and then you can do a manual recover and bring up the shared storage pool that way. So if you've got experimental SSP or something, then you could just, let's take it down and do it all mechanically and bring it back up, but I don't really see the point. Right, ultra blunt. I'm pretty blunt. I'm going to get a glass of water for a second. Hold on.
Well, Nigel's having a well-deserved little break. Just a reminder, we are going to take questions at the end. Thanks for submitting them, and thank you to Gareth for fielding many of them. This was due to be a 90-minute session. 60-minute initially, but turned into a 90-minute.
Just as well, right?
Yes, lots of material to cover. So carry on, Nigel.
Okay, we've only got 3 charts left or something. Ultra blunt option then. We're crash and burning our environment because we did lots and lots of testing of beta code and stuff like that. So we say, well, upgrade it as soon as you possibly can. But if you're in production use, and I'm thinking, in the past I was at customers running production workloads, you do have to be a bit more cautious, and you don't really want to take a risk, a step into the blue sky research with your production machines. So I think a sensible sort of cautious approach is for your production machines, maybe mid Q1 2019. By then, lots of people will have done non-production upgrades. Any things that come out will have may produce some bugs or highlight some bugs, and some fixes will arrive. So that's a sort of a sensible sort of approach. Because messing up your VO servers and all its LPARs is a fairly painful experience in production, and the stuff of nightmares, isn't it? In the meantime, of course, you can decide what upgrade process you test the one you prefer. Prepare all those backups and reinstalls and your regression tests. Get that sorted out, and you can look at some of those new features. If you like Iscuzzy, have a look at some of those Iscuzzy features and see if you want to switch those on in production later on. But again, as I said, I think second slide, I'm sure when you get to 3.1, it's going to be working fine. I haven't detected any bugs in the VoServer, as there isn't a great sort of fundamental change to the VoServer. It's just moving it up to the later AIX. And there's a few little bits and pieces. They've, for RAS reasons, performance reasons, and Iscuzzy as well. It's worth having. And that didn't move. It did. Okay, so here's my summary in general. Somebody should have had this earlier. RAS, Iscuzzy. It does give us this new clean slate, doesn't it? So we can start again. If we tried experiments or we tried applications and we didn't like them and we tried to get rid of them and there's bits of pieces hanging about, well, we can clear all those up. That's nice. There are still some people using older device drivers. This may be a good opportunity to move to the base multi-pathing adapters with the VoServer now, as well as part of this upgrade. We use the dual VoServers for RAS reasons, unlike KVM and all that. They've only got one VoServer possible. We've always had 2 in case we have a mistake on one, and we can carry on running our machine. But the other reason was to allow the upgrades, to make them simple. Don't do that in peak workloads, of course. Think about that regression test. I will start putting commands for a regression test in another AI Expert blog, probably tomorrow. Just my initial hints and tips, and Chris Gibson has done that already in his blog, so we'll pull those together for some examples. Don't forget all those backups. You want at least 2 parachutes, I think, before doing a production server, so you're safe. Then practice on non-production before you go into production. On the actual day, well, various methods you've got to decide, haven't you? Don't do it is the one. If you've got a new machine or you can evacuate an old machine, that's a good way of doing it. Absolutely safe. Regardless of the method you're going to use, do get those backups off the VoServer. Before you start, think regression test. That was on the previous one. Always do an alternative disk install if you possibly can, and because I've been using that all month, and it's great. Major screw up, and we're back and running again. Let's try that again with the right options, or the right network, and those sorts of problems. Don't forget all those non-VoServer applications, code and data, anything that's on root VG, apart from your virtual disks, or your virtual disks and your virtual DVDs, for example. That's going to catch people out. You should have a master copy somewhere else anyway. My preferred methods, if you're asking my opinion, if you shared storage pool, do B. So this is the update iOS, update to your VoServer 2.226 32 or 33 or 34 if they come out. Then I use NFS to get the makes this be onto my VIOS server, mount my the file system, half a second, and then I run the VIOS server update command. This seems low-hanging fruit, easy to do, not a lot of mechanics to actually do that, and I can watch it as it does it, and watch it, see if it fails at any point immediately. The traditional method, although it's traditional, doesn't mean it's old and bad, it's old and good. Perfectly acceptable, good method. You know exactly where you are. Backup, scratch install, then you scratch and install it, DVD, USB, flash drive, HMC NIM, and then you recover your metadata, and then you're back up and running. You know exactly where you are with that method. Or we can use what I slightly more exotic ways of doing that. There's two different ways with the NIM server. I've been using the BOSS Instant in particular, and for SSP you need to get to 22632 before you do that. I have run out of time for testing the old disk. The developers absolutely assure me it's fine, but I just haven't had time. So I like to actually try things before recommending them. But up to you if you want to try that method as well. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just me not having the time. Okay, so it's rock solid when you get there. Upgrading, decide your method, practice, and enjoy. Questions, Jyoti?
Hi, thank you so much, Nigel. There are a lot of questions, and Gareth has been answering a lot of them, so we'll go through them in a minute, any remaining ones. I was just going to go very quickly through, two things. One is to ask the people on the call what level of VIOS they're using in their production environment and in their test environment. So P equals whatever the level you're using, and T equals something into the chat window. That would be great if you can let us know, just to get an idea.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
We should have really done it via poll, but I didn't remember to do that before. And then a second thing I wanted to highlight is what's coming up next time. On the 5th of December, 10 a.m. UK time, a 90-minute session again. It's how to do AI, Internet of Things, and machine learning with IBM I. So if you're into IBM I, or even if you're not, how to do some of these new things. We've got Ross Cruikshank, who's a really bright chap, covering that session. So I hope you can join us on the 5th of December. I will send notification in the usual method. So watch out for that. Okay, so let's take some questions. Let me make sure I can go through. There's a lot of information coming through about what levels of VIOS people are using, so thank you for doing that. Carry on with that.
Good.
Right, Nigel, I don't know if you can see the chat window, but we will take a few, then we'll stop the recording, and then we'll stay on, if that's okay. Right. Some of these have been answered. Just going through and finding the first one. There was a question about application certifications. Is VIOS 3.1 certified by SAP HANA? And I think Gareth answered that with, we would probably need to check with SAP HANA.
Exactly. Why are you asking us? We don't certify it, they do.
There's a question about, is it possible to back up 3.1 via backup iOS and makes this be, and then restore via NIM? I assume NIM on AIX 7.2 is required. And
yes, that should work fine. It's just the same as before. Once you get to 3.1, you take a makes this be, and then you can NIM install it again. That's fine. Great.
On VIOS 2.x, because it is based on 6.1 of AIX, there's no option for SMT4. Is it beneficial for 3.1 to enable SMT4 or even 8 on Power 8 or Power 9? And Gareth has answered yes for Power 9.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I think that's in some of those rules that it applies to itself, so it should be using the right SMT level automatically.
Another question was about why IVM has been removed.
Nobody uses it.
Very few people do.
Or yes, not enough to justify the development cost and testing cost is what it boils down to.
Okay.
There are other options as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was Gareth speaking.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Gareth. Question was, do I need any special license to use 3.1 on servers where I'm currently using 2.x?
No, you've got a license for Power VM, which includes the hypervisor, which is built into the firmware, and the VoServer. So you're entitled to use whatever version of the VoServer you want. And now you want 3.1, believe me.
Thank you. There were a lot of questions about whether we're going to share the slide deck or the replay, and the answer is yes, we will be sharing the slide deck and the replay after today's session. Hope to get it out later on today, UK time. If you've registered, you'll receive email notification with the links. If you haven't registered for the series, then just send me an email. Are VIOS IFL compatible with for Power E980?
I don't think that's
I'm
got
not
anything to do with the
sure.
VoServer.
No.
Ask your local IBM representative.
Okay, yeah. So so there's a question about VIOS, dual VIOS servers, let's say A and B. I want to avoid upgrading as it is problematic, but I have no LPM or no possibility to create VIOS partition due to the hardware. I would like to do a fresh install of 3.1 on VIOS B. Is it possible to set up SEA failover, NPIV, maybe SSP, as on previous installations? So there would be mixed VIOS versions, i.e. 2.x on A and 3.1 on B for some time for testing purposes.
Yes, that will all work fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely guaranteed.
Does VIO 3.1 support VNIC?
Yeah, absolutely. Did VoServer 2 support it? Yes, that it supported again.
Okay, then those some questions that have been answered.
I noticed one down the bottom. We have Iscuzzy. Wouldn't it be better to use Iscuzzy LUNs on the LPAR directly rather than via the VoServer? Sounds like to me you're an Iscuzzy expert. I guess there must be some reason for doing it via the VoServer. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother. It's been there by popular request. It's being added. May have something to do with live partition mobility, or maybe it's because we want virtualization of the adapters, so that otherwise I think you have to have is it a PoE adapter or something to support booting Iscuzzy. But you could do mixed modes, so you use Iscuzzy over VoServer for the operating system, and once the operating system up, it uses Iscuzzy directly over the network or something like that. But, sounds like you're the expert there. We can debate that later. When I've given it a try, I'll let you know.
Okay, there was somebody asking whether we're going to capture this Q&A, and I think that would be a good idea, is to maybe have publish it as either a document off of the wiki or in your expert blog.
Yep, I agree.
So
Fine.
we'll capture all the questions in case we missed any as well. Right, I'm trying to see what is the effect of this upgrade of VIO on Power VC?
None.
None, yeah.
God, we got some real nervous people in the room, haven't we?
There's a question about the Flash version. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Can you use the Flash ISO if installing from an HMC?
No idea.
Okay, and somebody saying this upgrade process, great candidate for a future red paper.
Yeah. We'll probably write that just after everybody's moved to 3.1. That's the trouble. They take a while to come out.
Yeah,
And
I think that was specifically about getting the matrix B from the various different images, which I think you covered quite well, actually. You gave us example commands.
Yeah, works for me. It's not rocket science. It's just to think about what you're doing. And it's actually cat is there because it's concatenate is the command, isn't it?
Correct.
Merging files together. And that's one of the few occasions you actually use it to join files together and create a bigger result. But it's not rocket science. You can Google that and find 20 examples. The developer sent me their script, which was about 2 pages long. I said, I can do that in 10 commands, and it turned out to be 12.
And we've got a note here saying that we can use the flash ISO on the HMC, which doesn't surprise me. That was what I thought you could do.
Okay. The flash one had to be changed slightly to support USB memory keys. There's some way it joins the links together or something. Symbolic links are held slightly differently, but if it can be mounted, then it can be used. But don't try and put the flash onto a DVD. I think is what you can't do.
Uh-huh.
And the nice thing is the flash has a single Maxis B in it. It's much easier to get the Maxis B out. It's just a file sitting in the middle of the image. Go on, Jyoti.
Okay, so another question was, somebody said they read in a document that after upgrade to 3.1 through VIOS upgrade tool, disk attributes like reserve policy, queue depth, and so on will be set to defaults.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Let's make a comment about that.
Okay.
Because you're upgrading from AX 6.1 to AX 7.2, any tuning that you've done at 6.1 does not apply. I mean, it is a new operating system in that sense. A lot of defaults were changed in 7.1 and in 7.2. And IBM is convinced that the new defaults are what you really should be running, unless you've got something very odd about your machine. And so we're going to reset everything back to their defaults. So it is, a little action. I should have a slide on that. Maybe I'll slip one in before we publish the slides in an hour's time. So it is worth mentioning that in case you think there's a performance difference. On the whole, everybody in this webinar are experts and clearly well above average, but there are a whole bunch of, mediocre VoServer systems administrators that put in tuning options that make the VoServer go slower, and we certainly want to get rid of those so we can increase the performance, because we're not going to carry forward the AX 6.1 tuning options. But there's an action that you should at least be aware of that, and the VoServer has it's the VoServer audit tool, isn't it? It's called PART, P-A-R-T. That generates a report and will tell you any settings that it thinks are wrong and should be changed for your particular devices. So it would be worth running that in the first day after you've gone live, just to see if it's reporting any parameters do need changing.
Thank you. There were some questions again about PowerVC, and I think the question is about what level of PowerVC is certified for use with VIOS 3.1.
Yeah, we'll take that under advisement. We'll put that on the wiki.
Okay.
Okay,
watch the space. Yep.
I'm not sure if the PowerVC will know the difference. When you connect PowerVC to a machine, it can detect that it's an old VoServer and doesn't support what it needs to run PowerVC. But if it finds that it's a current one, then it should be fine. But we'll go and check that.
Okay. There's a question about the p-admin password. Is it reset when you upgrade and then reset when you restore?
I think you are asked as your first login to change the p-admin password just like you do with a fresh install.
Okay.
And I yeah, it's a good observation. I actually set it to what it was set to, because then you don't have to change your documentation, right? So I haven't actually tested that.
Okay. I think there are quite a few other questions, but I think we better stop the recording there and we'll continue them, or we will publish the Q&A.
Okay.
That might be the best way to do it, because we have run over. So let me just thank Nigel and Gareth for today. Fantastic session, 275 people I saw at one point, so really, really good turnout. Thank you all very much for joining. I'm going to stop the recording there.